Hello, everyone. Am I audible? Okay, good. So we had a long break, exactly 24 hours. So first thing first, tomorrow also we will have a class at 1:30 p.m. IST. And we will inform you if anything changes. I will start today's episode with a very interesting video. Let's watch through it and let me know your thoughts.
The city of Hiroshima lies prostrate after the withering blast which wiped out 53,000 of its population. 4 square miles of buildings leveled by the first of 2 small bombs that decided the fate of Japan. Nagasaki, the great naval base, which became the second target 3 days later. This time, the explosion was concentrated within 1 square mile, making the devastation even more complete. First camera record inside Tokyo itself shows the power which lay behind the super fortress raids long before the days of the atom bomb. High explosive had laid in ashes more than 3/4 of the city, which was intended to be the capital of all Asia. Outside the Emperor's palace, almost untouched by bombs, a few Japanese still worship while Allied planes patrol overhead.
So who will tell me what's happening? Smyro?
So these atomic bombs were dropped by US after the Pearl Harbor attacks that Japan carried out, and this was in retaliation to the incident that happened in Pearl Harbor.
Is that so?
And also because US also wanted to end this ongoing battle or the war which was going on. It led to loss of various lives, American lives. So it wanted to end that as well.
Okay, by killing civilians? Interesting. Because I thought Churchill and Truman, they were fighting against dictatorships and authorities. Nazis is a term that they used. Anyone else? What do you think? Was it justified? Was it okay? Krishna?
Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. I think, sir, the video reckoned with uh, the scenarios of the aftermath of the nuclear destruction that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And, sir, additionally, I would say, sir, I think it was not, uh, I will say, sir, it was not a revert of Pearl Harbor because Pearl Harbor happened in 1942, I guess. So, uh, uh, because of Pearl Harbor, I think USA enters into the war. But that was not the justification that United States gave for attacking on
Yeah,
Nagasaki
around
and
this time, it was, I
Hiroshima.
think, clear that, the alliance of the Americans and the British, they won the war. It was largely clear. They knew this. So what was the reason to bomb civilians? Because millions of lives were actually destroyed in seconds. On 6th August 1945, US dropped the first bomb. They called it Little Boy on Hiroshima. 3 days later, on August 9th, they dropped the second bomb, Fat Man, on Nagasaki. They said, that this will force Japanese to surrender. But the question is, was this necessary? Or were their egos at clash? Or, something much more significant? Venkat?
Sir, I think it was a time where the Cold War was getting started. It was a power dominance to show USSR that we are also capable. A power demonstration.
So does it justify burning alive those 2 lakh people? The bomb that hit near Hiroshima, it killed almost half a lakh people by the end of the year. Most were civilians. They died instantly. And why not? 4,000 degrees centigrade. What was the heat? The center of the explosion. 3 days later in Nagasaki, if that was not enough, another city. Entire neighborhoods disappeared in seconds. Schools, hospitals, homes. The bombs did not distinguish between all these things. But again, sufferings did not stop with those deaths. Survivors, whosoever was able to survive, they lived with burns, radiation sickness, cancer. Children born decades later, they had genetic mutations. Thoughts on this? Anyone in defense of the Americans? US justified the bombings by saying that they saved lives by ending the war. They literally said that. But let's think critically, factually. Japanese Navy was already destroyed by this time. Its cities were already being bombed. US firebombed Tokyo in March 1945, killed almost a lakh in one night. So was this atomic bomb necessary to make Japanese surrender? Of course, Americans, they will come up with many movies, Oppenheimer and whatnot. They will justify their decisions. But please understand, what are they trying to say? And why? I tend to think we wrongly term this as Hiroshima bombing or Nagasaki bombing. Those were crimes against humanity. That's the term that should be used. Of course, we don't use these terms, but in reality, it was the crime against humanity, no? But now let me ask you a different question. How do you think that this event of crime against humanity, how do you think it changed the way world thinks about nuclear weapons? Because this event is significant. Gayatri?
Yes, sir. After seeing this tremendous devastation, world could see that how dangerous nuclear weapons can be. And after that, United Nations was formed, various treaties were signed, and we can also see that in Cold War there was no actual use of nuclear weapon because they saw this devastation.
But what's the reason? Why was there no actual use of nuclear weapons? Some may say it was because of the doctrine of MAD, mutually assured destruction. But there is more to it. Because then the question is, US was a sole power in some parts in history, be it the Korean War, be it the Vietnam invasion. I mean, if you compare US with those local Koreans versus local Vietnamese, US could have done something, but still they did not use those weapons. Of course, we can argue Russians would have retaliated, but I don't think so. Small scale destruction in Korea, Russia perhaps not, they would not have gone into that. Many have written and acquired PhDs on those theses. If you think about it, this event, it did not just destroy two cities, it also changed humanity's perception of nuclear weapons forever. It created what some may call as nuclear taboo. Now, does anyone know what is a taboo? What does it mean? TABOO. What does it mean? Using a term, nuclear taboo. Sharani?
So taboos are those topic like that people would not want to talk so openly about, or like uh, could be judged for being spoken about.
Like politics of development in India. How dare you talk about that? Taboo is something society strongly discourages. A taboo is something that societies see as unacceptable, even if it's possible, technically. For example, Giriraj Singh ji doing politics of development, not hate. It's not acceptable. Bihar, not possible. A taboo of directly holding the prime minister accountable. See, technically, we can question a PM. He's the prime minister of our country, not the head of one specific small company. So it's a democracy after all. He also gave a lot of access. He also abide by many rules. But then doing so in practice, it invites backlash. In 2016, we all know the context in which demonetization was announced, right? UP elections. People stood in long lines to exchange money, get hold of their own money. Businesses, especially small ones, they suffered massive losses. Economy slowed down. Cash dependent informal sectors was hit hard. Critics they questioned the policy. They asked, why were the proper measures not taken? Why wasn't the economy prepared for this shock? But whenever those questions were raised, supporters of the government they accused critics of being anti-national. The narrative shifted from discussing the policy to protecting prime minister's image. How can you question him? Instead of accountability, what we saw was a rallying cry to defend the PM. So why does this happen? Why does questioning the prime minister becomes a taboo? In Indian politics, prime minister is not just a political leader, but he's a symbol of national pride. That's perhaps a reason. Questioning the prime minister is seen by some as questioning the nation itself. Sad reality, it's a never-ending story. Today, it's happening with Adani ji. Questioning Adani ji today, it's like questioning India. Is it true? Does it make sense, this argument? If it does, let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts. Yes, Avyansh?
So this is very fastest uh, worldview that nation and leader is intertwined.
People say that Adaniji pays taxes, creates jobs. How will you argue? You will say every company is obligated to pay taxes. You also do that? Does that mean they're above the law? Adaniji's businesses today are under fire for several reasons. Allegations of inflating stock prices, exploiting regulatory loopholes, receiving preferential treatment from the government. If true, this is not just corporate malpractice, it's theft. It is theft. It inflates his company's values artificially, giving him undue advantages while ordinary investors, especially the middle class, they will lose money. They are sold the story of rising Indian stock market. And by the way, when Adaniji builds these airports, ports, power plants, how is he financing all that? He takes massive loans from public sector banks like SBI, LIC. LIC has invested so much, so much of money in Adaniji's companies. Took a massive loss a few days ago. And that's the money that belongs to Indian taxpayer. Company defaults, they may run away. But when you will see a news and a new finance minister announcing magically, what's the term that she uses? When companies, when they do not pay back the money they run off, what's the term that they use? When they restructure the balance sheets. I've gone through all economics episodes, right? Kritich?
So write-offs.
Write-off. And how will you explain this to someone in rural part of UP or Bihar or MP? With all the write-offs, Malia ji is in UK. And of course, when time comes, Adani ji may also run away. And you may end up defending him. If your LIC pension fund or public tax money is tied up in a risky Adani project, and these projects they fail due to fraud, it's ordinary citizens who will lose, not Adani ji. When demonetization was announced, Adani ji and Ambani ji were not standing in line. Ordinary Indians, they were standing in line. But they failed to realize this. Because questioning Adani ji is like questioning India. This is the argument. It's a very dangerous argument. Criticizing one business person or company is not the same as attacking the country. In fact, questioning individuals or corporations with immense power, it is healthy for India's democracy. Because unchecked power, it leads to exploitation, and it is leading to exploitation. Do you think in a world of monopolies and duopolies, Indian startups will flourish? Can you dream of launching a company that can compete with such businesses? Not possible. You are at a major disadvantage, and that is why oligopolies they thrive in countries like Russia, in China, and now in India and parts of Africa. But it's not healthy for the country. Preparing for civil services should not be the dream of Indians, honestly. I know we're in this game, but preparing for civil services, and of course, this will continue to happen in time to come. Civil services may not will not have that much prestige in developed countries. But in countries like India, Pakistan, and African states, they hold a lot of power, and that's why people are attracted to the glamour, spending substantial years of their lives cracking this examination. So, of course, none of you are to be blamed. You're securing your future. That's how you can change your generations in time to come, perhaps. But we must understand, I'm sure you all will go into occupy important positions. I hope you may promote rationality in your offices, in your workspaces. Don't silence this debate by saying that if you are talking against Modi ji or Adani ji, questioning government policies, it's against India. No, because that's how you're getting distracted from asking hard questions. From Giriraj Singh, you should ask questions on textile. How is our textile policy doing? Not on how to unite Hindus. Of course, that's important. Let's do that. But policies, that's why they're the ministers. We have to ensure that we protect our country's resources, ensure fairness. If we do not question the powerful, who will? Democracy, it thrives on debate and on scrutiny, never on blind loyalty. Blind loyalty, that's dangerous. So taboo is something society strongly discourages or sees as unacceptable. Nuclear weapons became one of those taboos after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Let me show you a video. A very important thinker. I would urge you to use her name in the answers. I think now she teaches at Fletcher. She was in Brown University before, I think.
Is where deterrence was not enough because, in fact, we have cases from the Cold War where deterrence didn't operate, right? There was not a deterrence, a relationship of nuclear deterrence in place. That is, the United States possessed nuclear weapons, but the adversary did not. So the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. And when you look at why nuclear weapons weren't used in these crises, there are a number of factors having to do with military and political consequences. But there are also moral considerations, and these connect to the taboo. Decision makers worried about how many civilians would be killed on the other side if they used nuclear weapons in the Korean War. And what's especially interesting is when you look at cases where the United States could have used nuclear weapons and there would have been no fear of retaliation. So this was in the first 10 years of the Cold War, say during the Korean War. Or in the Vietnam War, when the adversary was not nuclear armed. And so the United States could have used nuclear weapons without really worrying that there would be a retaliatory response with nuclear weapons. And in these cases, decision makers actually expressed concern about the vast civilian casualties that would be caused by a nuclear strike. And also the political costs, the outrage from allies, that there's lots of concern about what the allies would think if we, the United States, used a nuclear weapon again, or what would the effect be if we used a nuclear weapon again on Asians after the use on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Thoughts on anyone? Thoughts on whatever she's saying? Anyone? Sujit?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I think she was talking about the factors that would make the reasons for the nuclear. The US didn't use the nuclear bomb, so the reasons were some of the reasons were like how many civilians would die in both the contexts.
So Nina Tannenwald, make a note of her name, Nina Tannenwald, Tannenwalt. You should use her name as and when you discuss about taboos in this space. That's how you will get extra marks. So Nina is arguing that bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bombing, that we saw in the beginning of our class, it created something called as nuclear taboo, a moral or a psychological barrier that prevents countries from using nuclear weapons. Why? Because the destruction was so extreme. Human suffering was so unimaginable. It was so unimaginable that the world decided never again. So this taboo is incredibly powerful, right? The US had nuclear weapons during the Vietnam War. US had nuclear weapons during the Korean War. But that's not interesting. The interesting bit is even when they could have used them, they did not. Even the mighty power, it thought, and they feared of the condemnation. They might lose the legitimacy. So nuclear taboo. It shows how nuclear taboo, it influences decision making even for the most powerful countries. Right? So taboos are also critical, important. Of course, we had discussed a lot about nuclear deterrence, but here I want you to think from a different perspective about taboos. So Nina is arguing that nuclear weapons have not been used not just because of military strategy, not just because of fear of retaliation, but because of a powerful moral stigma attached to their use. Nina believes that this taboo developed due to the horrifying destruction caused by Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But this taboo is not a law, right? It's an informal global norm. Criticizing Adani ji, right? No. Equating Adani ji to India, it's not a law, but a taboo is created, at least in our country, that he is India. An unspoken rule. If you question him, perhaps you will be questioned for your allegiances. So Nina Sanand she studied the Korean War, and she showed how US leaders, despite their military advantages, how they avoided nuclear weapons because of the moral stigma and perhaps a potential backlash from allies. But now let me ask you this question. Is this nuclear taboo still holding strong today? Or are we seeing some cracks in it? And that's a very interesting question. No? Because many things are contextual. In today's context, do we see any cracks, Mancho?
Sir, I think if we consider the nation-to-nation consideration, then we can see nuclear taboo would hold true. But as we have recently seen that Russia changed its nuclear doctrine. So there is a possibility and also rise of non-state actors and other factors we are considering in today's era. There is a chance that nuclear taboo won't hold true for long.
Beautiful. Makes sense. Let's see a video. Three hours ago. Okay, not audible. Okay, we'll have a bad day then. Because today we have to see so many videos. Let me try this again. You may unraise your hands, and if it's still not audible, do raise your hand so that I'm aware.
Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Friday that Russia would keep testing its new hypersonic missile in combat and has a stockpile of them at the ready. Putin spoke a day after Russia fired the new Oreshnik missile into Ukraine for the first time. This CCTV footage shows flashes over the Ukrainian city of Dnipro after Russia said it fired the hypersonic medium-range missile.
Такого оружия, как мы знаем, как вы знаете.
As we know, as you know, no one in the world has such a weapon yet, Putin said in televised comments. He said the step was prompted by Ukraine's use of U.S. ballistic missiles and British cruise missiles to hit Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kyiv was working with Western partners to work out systems to counter, quote, new risks. He described Russia's use of the new missile as an escalation. While Russia said more tests would follow, a U.S. official said the weapon is experimental and that Russia has a limited number of them. RAND Corporation engineer and analyst Michael Bonnert.
In many ways, this is Putin acting out because he feels vulnerable. And this is one of the few ways left that he can demonstrate concern while trying to look strong at the same time.
Moscow says that by giving the green light for Ukraine to fire Western missiles deep inside Russia, the U.S. and its allies are entering into direct conflict with Russia. On Tuesday, Putin approved policy changes that lowered the threshold for Russia to use nuclear weapons in response to an attack with conventional ones.
Okay. Things are changing now in the world, right? So are we seeing cracks in this thing? Is it weakening? Russia is sort of amending its nuclear policy. But now the question is, has Russia actually used nuclear weapons yet? So it looks like this taboo hasn't completely broken then, but it is being tested. Lowering the threshold, rise of non-state actors. But I do agree that nuclear taboo is still powerful, but it is not indestructible. So does it make sense? Nuclear taboo? Do you understand what it means? So today is a class on English language. So one word is taboo, the other word is norm. What's the difference? Nuclear norms versus nuclear taboo. How are norms different from taboos? Yes, Myra?
So norms are something that are not legally or they are not codified, but they are being practiced by a lot of people. So it becomes a common practice, and they're different from taboo because norms are something that people do willingly, and taboo is something that they refrain from doing.
See, unlike taboos, these taboos are based on morality. Norms are formalized, much more formalized. Formalized through treaties, through agreements. Okay? Norms are shared rules, expectations about how people or how countries, how should they behave. Can anyone think of the most important norm addressing nuclear governance? One of the most important norm in nuclear governance is Non-Proliferation Treaty that we discussed, deciphered in the previous episode. NPT. What is it all about? Harish?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, non-proliferation treaty it is basically promotes the country not to develop nuclear weapons, sir.
We spent so much time discussing NPT in the last episode. But okay, I mean, you are technically correct. Anyone else? Akshay?
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, as we discussed yesterday, it is about the three goals of NPT, which first is non-proliferation, like it restricts the further expansion in the numbers of nuclear weapon, and second is the disarmament, which states about disarming the existing nuclear weapons with the P5 countries mainly, or with some like, and third is the use of nuclear energy for a like uh, other than weapons for energy, medicine, and all the areas.
I think NPT is it's a global treaty designed to stop the spread of nuclear weapons. All of you are correct and would have been correct. It is in a way encouraging, and through various deals, tactics, negotiations, it's encouraging countries to, use nuclear energy for peaceful purposes. Okay, let me show you a video now. So NPT is a norm, nuclear norm. Now look at this video and tell me, has the nuclear norm worked or not? If yes, then why? If no, then why not?
(7차) 핵실험 준비도 이미 마무리한 것으로 판단됩니다.
The DPRK needs to understand that the United States' commitment to the security of the ROK and to Japan is ironclad, and we will use the full range of U.S. defense capabilities to defend our allies, including nuclear, conventional, and missile defense capabilities.
우리 과학연구 부문에서는 지하 핵시험을 안전하게 성공적으로 진행하였다.
대륙간 탄도 로켓 장착용 수소탄 시험에서 완전 성공.
Okay, thoughts anyone? Has this nuclear norm worked or not? Adityan?
So in the case of North Korea, the nuclear norm haven't worked because they have signed a treaty in nuclear non-proliferation treaty, but they have withdrew from it, and they also signed CTBT, and they also withdrew from it, sir.
See, as potential diplomats, and of course, to score 300 plus in your optional paper, you have to use these terminologies. That's why I'm spending time on this. Nuclear taboo, nuclear norms. So as we go through the episode today, make sure that you're learning these essential words, putting this in your dictionary. Now, Adityan is right. These examples show that norms like the NPT are under strain. North Korea joined but later withdrew, openly building its arsenal. India, Pakistan never signed the treaty. Not just that, they developed the nuclear weapons. So why do you think that these countries are breaking the norm? So we met Brahmachalani in the last episode, and he offered a very interesting perspective. He says that NPT is unequal. It's allowing the nuclear armed states to keep their weapons. Not just that, it's stopping others from developing their own. And that is unfair. And that has been India's position all throughout. We will never sign this unfair treaty. What's the logic? What's the basis? Why should the Americans, why should the Russians, the Chinese, French, why should they have the weapons? Just because they built it before 1968. And if Chinese have the weapons, we also have existential threat. That's why we will not sign it. To which Pakistanis will say, if India has the weapon, why should we sign it? And therefore we have the arms race. Smiling Buddha, winking Buddha, Operation Shakti. This inequality is a concerning thing in the world of international affairs. It makes us think, the system is rigged. And that's why some countries, they choose to ignore the norms. Some choose to reject these norms. America does both. Let me show you a very interesting video. Let's go through this.
In a deep pond, spent nuclear fuel is stored. It's been removed from the core of a nuclear reactor to make way for fresh fuel. It's extremely radioactive, so safety is paramount. But these men are not checking if it's safe, rather if it's all there. They're safeguards inspectors. At the Dukovany nuclear power plant in the Czech Republic, refueling activities have taken place. And when nuclear materials have been on the move, the inspectors need to pay a visit.
The main purpose of inspectors' presence is to verify that all the activities with fuel are according our declaration, so that we handle with nuclear fuel as we declare according to all rules and safeguards provisions.
Nuclear fuel is used to generate electricity. It can contain uranium and plutonium, which are used to make nuclear bombs. One of the main roles of the IAEA is to make sure that countries are not misusing nuclear material.
Where is Devesh, where is IAEA headquartered?
So it was in
Fezzi?
Sir, Vienna.
Okay, good.
to develop weapons. It's been doing this for over 5 decades through a system of safeguards. These allow inspectors to monitor facilities involved in the manufacture, use, storage and disposal of nuclear fuel. 250.
Okay, so it's a beautiful side of nuclear inspection. But why is this interesting, fascinating? Epistemic. Anyone heard this term before? Epistemic. Like I said, it's a class on English today. Learning a new vocabulary of diplomacy. Epistemic communities. What does that mean? Devesh?
A way of doing anything or a way of learning anything.
Anyone else? You're seeing some people, they were the experts. Epistemic communities are groups of experts. That's what we saw in that video. They share knowledge. They provide the technical oversight. They play a very big role in monitoring treaties and ensuring compliance. In essence, I agree. Epistemic relates to knowledge, processes of acquiring it, validating what is true or not. So epistemic community refers to a network of professionals or experts who share a common understanding of an issue, and they also possess specialized knowledge about it. Epistemic community. They often influence decision-making, policies, compliances with international norms and treaties. So what do you see in this video? What do you see happening in this video? What role are these experts playing? IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. It is an example of epistemic community, right? It ensures countries, they follow the rules under treaties like the NPT or CTBT. But these epistemic communities, they also have limitations. Who will tell me the limitations? We did all this in the last episode. But today I'm just giving you the grammar and the language. Think. Harika?
Sir, the countries also need to sign treaties to ensure to allow this IAEA to monitor them. So that is also
Yeah.
a problem.
That's a problem. US, China refused to ratify CTBT. Weakens the global enforcement. During the Ukraine war, Russia's nuclear threats. It is showing us how national interests can overpower institutional rules. So are these epistemic communities effective, or do they lack the real power? So taboos, norms, epistemic communities. Together, they have helped manage nuclear proliferation, but they are not perfect. Taboo, I agree, largely worked, but cracks are now appearing. Nuclear norms are like the NPT. They did curb some proliferation, and we discussed all of that in the last episode. But still, they're being criticized for being unequal. And then we have these epistemic communities like the IAEA, promotes accountability, but it often lacks the enforcement. It's limited by geopolitics. So please note down one question that UPSC had asked in the past. Beautiful question. 20-mark question, and answer it accordingly. What roles do norms, taboos, and epistemic communities play in the context of nuclear proliferation? 20 marks to 50 words. What rules do norms, taboos, and epistemic communities play in context of nuclear proliferation? Tomorrow UPSC can, say what roles do norms play or taboos play. In this case, everything is covered in this question. So once you're ready, let me know the answer. No breakout rooms for now. And also, Archita, a small request. Can you delay my call by 1 hour today? The
yes,
meeting? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm creating breakout rooms for a few minutes.
I'll try, bro. Let's define NPT and how it functions in the first para, and then give each one a para like norms and taboos and epitomic communities. The structure, just
I don't think we
I
can
guess
write
we can
NPT
start.
in the intro because it's not in the question.
like
Yeah,
in
yes, we
just
can
1 or 2
start with.
lines.
I'm
Yeah,
Go
audible?
ahead.
I guess we can start with the nuclear norms, taboos, and epistemic communities has played a significant role in reducing the proliferation of nuclear weapon around the world, but it do have some limitation on its own. Then we can start with the nuclear norms. They are the much formalized treaties and agreements. For example, NPT. They have played a significant role in reducing the number of nuclear arsenals in countries like South Korea. Yesterday, we have seen that South Korea has completely deployed its nuclear arsenal. But however, this has not worked in the case of non-signatory countries like India, Pakistan, and Israel. But some of the countries like North Korea do have withdrew from these norms. And then we can go with nuclear taboo and explain what it is. It is a moral, it is not a formal agreement, but a moral barrier which prevents countries from using nuclear weapon. And this has been a strong equipment which worked against the use of nuclear weapons. For example, it has been worked, and then we can give a short history how the nuclear taboo has developed after the aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki's devastating effects. Then we can say even US do have nuclear weapons during the war against Korean nations. It doesn't use because of these nuclear taboos, but in today's geopolitical scenario, it seems to be have some cracks because Russia has changed their nuclear doctrine, and there is an emergence of tension in West Asian countries. Then we can go with the epistemic communities such as IAEA. They are the specialized community with the knowledge of nuclear weapons, and they are responsible for monitoring the activities and the safety of the nuclear sites. And then we can give their limitations and examples, I guess.
Like just 1 point to add, bro. I think there is one scholar we have to quote in
That's
the
not an involved in the taboo we can add.
yeah. that-
It's Nina Tannenwald, right?
Yeah.
And then in nuclear norms, we can use Mr. Yesterday on Scholarly, Chelani,
Yeah.
Brahm Chelani.
Yeah,
And we can
Brahmacharani for
explain about
nuclear apartheid, he said. Then I think Scott D. Sagan, we can introduce an intro to that. He talked about that against the nuclear proliferation. He supported the NPT. So in the last para and the concluding para, we should write about that there are still some structural and functional challenges as the norms and the taboos face the issues of rise of non-state actors and continuously changing the nuclear treaties and the doctrines and looming wars among the countries because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine or Israel-Palestine. And also we can say that IAEA also faces some challenges for enforcement and all. Then we can conclude.
We can add a point like national interest comes first over the institutions, and also we can give an example of Russia, how it is still using the nuclear weapons, like if
Yeah,
in
we
the
can write
Ukraine.
like realists saw the international world order as anarchic structure. So we can also write that line to bring in realist perspective.
Yeah.
So Adityan would answer from our side if sir asks who is going to answer.
I have an doubt, bro, Himanshu. I mean, is it not right that if we give definition in the first para, nuclear proliferation, like how it functions and all?
We can, but because there are three separate aspects to it, that what roles do norms, then taboos, then epistemic communities play? So that would be the direct question to answer. Otherwise, you have to introduce it like that nuclear proliferation has been a challenge ever since USA has bombed Japan. Then we can make a context. Then we can come on norms, taboo, and epistemic communities that they do play a role for preventing the nuclear proliferation.
Chandana, tell me the answer.
Yes, sir. Post World War II, various measures have been taken to avoid the use of nuclear weapons. One of it being the nuclear taboo. After the devastation of bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it created nuclear taboo. The nuclear taboo is something which society disapproves of. Nina Tanewald has described it as an informal global norm, which provides moral and psychological barriers. This held true in during Korean War, where US didn't use the nuclear weapon. And then the next is nuclear norms. Norms are shared rules which are formalized through treaties. Example of it is nuclear non-proliferation treaty. But the drawback of this is North Korea, which withdrew from the NPT, and it conducted 6 nuclear tests between 2006 and 17. Epistemic communities are a group of experts who monitor treaty and ensure compliance. But through the examples of US and other countries which have not ratified CTBT and agreements like JCPOA, we can see how the enforcement is lacking.
Okay, fine. See, another thing is, in this question, there was a lot asked, right? Norms, taboos, epistemic communities. All of that to be put in under 250 words. So I was sensing that some of you wanted to, give good background of nuclear weapons, some treaties, end to end. My advice would be for such questions, if you know the answer, get down to addressing that question head on. Do not waste your time on bushes. Address the core. Many of your peers, they will make this mistake. They will focus all their energies into writing all the nonsense, the peripherals, introduction and whatnot. Can you all hear me? Okay. So many of your peers will make this mistake. Going back into the history, background, all of that is fine. But my request is, please understand the question and address that, the core question. And if you have the time, then you can think about the other aspects. For a question which is very clear, specific, address it. Okay. So good job. Sandana, this is how you can go about it. Norms, taboos, and epistemic communities play crucial roles in managing nuclear proliferation by influencing global behavior and policies. These ideas have evolved through key historical events and shape the contemporary nuclear order. Then start with nuclear taboo. You can write that the nuclear taboo, as explained by Nina Tannenwald, emerged after the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. The immense destruction, the immense human suffering, it created a moral and psychological barrier against using nuclear weapons. Since then, this taboo has prevented countries, including the US, from employing nuclear weapons in conflicts such as Vietnam or Korea. Why? Due to the fear of global backlash, loss of legitimacy. However, recent developments highlight cracks in this taboo. If you want to write about this, for example, during the Russian-Ukraine war, Russia has issued some threats, has used advanced weaponry like hypersonic missiles, testing the global psychological barrier against the nuclear use. Okay, but still I would say it's not broken yet because Russia has not used it yet. It's testing it. Then move towards norms. Norms under frameworks like the NPT, give you an example, Non-Proliferation Treaty. It aims to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons. While successful in curbing the unchecked proliferation, they face criticism for their inherent inequality. Note down the name that we learned yesterday in the last episode. Critics like Brahmachalani, they argue that the NPT unfairly allows nuclear-armed states to maintain their arsenal while restricting others. What does it reflect? It reflects hierarchical structure. There's some hierarchy. For example, India and Pakistan both they have not signed it. They pursued nuclear weapons program. Challenge this. Give example of North Korea. And then move towards epistemic communities, like the IAEA, read the full form, to play a vital role in enforcing treaties such as CTBT. These communities promote transparency, verification, accountability. However, their impact is also limited. Why? US, China, not ratified CTBT. It undermines its universal implementation. Okay. So, and then you conclude, while norms, taboos, epistemic communities have collectively reduced nuclear risk, but they are increasingly vulnerable in a volatile world of non-state actors, rising conflicts. The growing disregard for nuclear taboo, the inequality, so on and so forth, limitations of epistemic communities, there's some need to work around this. 250 words. There was so much to write. And therefore, there was no need to waste time on writing the nonsense that anyone would anyway know. Okay, so you write all that stuff and you don't know the answer to get average, below average scores. But if you are training to be above 300 plus, So address the question head on, especially for IR. So with this, we wrap up our another pressing global concern, and that is nuclear proliferation. Okay, so from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Russia-Ukraine war, non-proliferation treaties, Cold War, some episodes of it, we have learned quite a few ideas and things. The big takeaway here is that, of course, global frameworks are vital, but they are only as strong as the political will that supports those frameworks. Now, think back for a moment. This is the second major global concern that we've tackled together. What was the first one? Real?
Transnational terrorism.
Yeah, terrorism. And yeah, of course, that we wrapped up United Nations because now you can tie the threats together. Terrorism is a threat that crosses borders, cultures, ideologies. Today, we are wrapping up nuclear proliferation. It reminds us of the devastating powers of these weapons. But very interestingly, these issues are telling us that how interconnected the world is. No country can afford to act in isolation. Of course, countries can give these rhetorics, America first, Argentina first, Japan first. But you all will be last. Why? Because your existence is dependent on what's happening in Afghanistan or Iraq or America. Rogue states, non-state actors, real concern, cyber attacks. And no country can fight all these attacks on their own. So let's move towards the next big global concern now. And I've said this in the past, there's absolutely no need to worry about or where to read all these things. Revise, re-revise whatever we're doing here at MisFits for your optional. Rely entirely on classes, entirely. As long as you are making good notes of those questions and answers, attending these classes at least once, and revising those notes, the questions and answers before the examination, you will see remarkable improvement. Some of you would already be seeing this, right? Anyone wants to share their thoughts who've been regular with classes? And then we'll move towards the next global concern. Yes, Venkat?
I can see a total change in my perspective for every article which I'm studying in the newspaper, or whether it is taking the news or writing blogs or whatever it is. I can sense a lot of difference, Naman. Really. I mean that in each and every topic. A different sense of perspective, at least
And
from.
one good thing is that you are regular with sending us the daily updates as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your consistency there. Good job.
It's all your hard work, I would put it. It is not that easy. I could be consistent, but the content which is preparing, that makes the impact.
Okay, thank you so much. Animesh, after you.
That firstly, day before yesterday, I was just watching a movie in Netflix called 13 Hours, and how that Libyan attack, how the US conducted the Libyan attack. So the way movie started, I directly went to the director's name and I was thinking how US is shaping the perspective here and how Naman sir idealist, realist, functionalist theories are coming here. So, sir, definitely it's not just about learning the PSR optional, but I think it has been the best decision of my life because the way I have got interest in law and diplomacy, even when I drive my bike in my free time, then also I am thinking about a person is crossing the road, how the idealist will think or how the realist will go about those things, what will the functionalist do or what the Aristotle will tell. Such complete change of transformation in personality. More than that, we are 110% we are trying to be in that civil services, but for me, journey matters a lot, sir. So you have transformed me completely. So thanks for that, sir.
Oh, that's good to know. The goal is simple. 300 plus is what we care for in optional. If you can get 300 plus, I can give you in writing, you will see your name in the list. Seriously, 300 plus in PSIR, you will see the reflection in your GS score. There's a huge overlap of PSIR with GS, and you will see the reflection in your interviews as long as you're attending these classes. With just one optional, you can assure your name in the list. 300 plus. That's what we're aiming for every day. And I know how close we are. I will deliver my 1000%. My request is that you stay diligent and do not get confused with the nonsense happening around. I'm sure there will be many distractions in this journey in terms of innumerable YouTube videos. Ignore all that nonsense. The free stuff that you see on YouTube, it's actually nonsense. Okay, it takes efforts to build things remarkably well. Shalini, off to you.
Yeah, sir. So, in a hope to clear this year's prelims, I had taken a PSIR test series last year, which is actually expired. So, I thought in order to check my revision and keep my preparation in order, I wrote the old test that I had got last year. And I wrote the Western Political Thought test. I was literally able to write the answer just by revising my notes for one time. Like, I was able to build a lot of perspective. It's just that though it took a lot of time, more than it should have actually taken, but I was very much satisfied with the way I'm trying to build the answer. So I'm able to understand and realize what are the outcomes of being consistent in coming to classes and writing down the notes and revising the lectures again and again. And yeah, thank you so much for condensing the vast syllabus that we have for PSIR into tiny capsules, which is easily digestible to us. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think I see quite a few, many emails that get forwarded to me that, I want to speak in classes, ask me questions, so on and so forth. And here I'm asking you a question. Tell me your thoughts on how is it going, your responses from many. But okay, good job. Let's move on to the next phase of the journey. And this is the next global concern that we have. What could that be all about? If you were to pick up the newspaper today, if you were to pick up the newspaper tomorrow, you will read detailed articles on that global concern. What could that be? Archita?
I'm thinking around two lines, perhaps rise of AI, cybersecurity, or climate change. So,
okay, one of those. Now let's pick one of those. Which one would that be? Venkat?
I'm suspecting that there is some UN resolution on human rights, which has happened.
Of course, human rights will discuss all that. Environment. How many of you, again, surviving in Delhi? How is it happening? How's it going over there? Don't you think environment is one of the most urgent challenges of our time? Who should we blame? Kejriwal ji or Modi ji or Rahul Gandhi ji? We should blame ourselves. Because we don't think about it. It's not just about melting ice caps, rising temperature. It's about how climate change will now shape and reshape geopolitics, how it will reshape our livelihood or even our security. Think about this. At a time when the world is debating clean energy, we're also seeing environmental flashpoints in unexpected places. Anyone heard what's happening in Baku? Yes, Trivedi?
COP29 was happening, sir. It was the developing nations are not accepted the resolutions because they are not getting the enough sanctions asked by them.
Okay. Where is Baku? Which country?
Azerbaijan.
Okay, Azerbaijan. What is it known for? It has vast oil and gas reserves. But right now, it's such a center of environmental and geopolitical concerns. So let's start this journey with a very interesting video, and let me know your thoughts. And like I said, no background needed. Will decipher every aspect from here on, okay? Related to climate change. This is from, I think, 4 to 5 hours ago, so it's very fresh news. And you will read a lot many articles tomorrow on this in the newspapers.
India does not accept the goal proposal in its present form. Developed countries, I regret to say that this...
See, observe the claps. Observe the terminologies. Developed countries. What's happening?
This document is nothing more than an optical illusion.
Again, optical illusion.
This, in our opinion, will not address the enormity of the challenge we all face. Therefore, we oppose the adoption of this document. We oppose the adoption of this document.
Look at the repetitions of words. Opposing, stressing it again, opposing.
India opposes the adoption of this document.
India on Sunday did. But what's the need for all this? Why do you think India is opposing it? What is this document all about? How many of you have no idea? To all those who have the ideas, please have your hands unraised. To all those who have no idea what's happening. Tomorrow, I'll tell you what you will see in the newspaper. You'll see a headline that will say that COP29 climate finance deal. India rejected it. We'll see India rejects COP29 climate finance deal. Some may call it, India calls it an optical illusion. You will read the headline, move on to a different headline. I think, so what? So what is this COP29? What could this mean, COP29? Akriti, thoughts? What could it be?
Sir, I don't have any idea. I just joined today.
Okay. COP29. It's totally fine if you have no idea, because no one has any idea as of now. We have not studied it. But you would have read newspaper in your past 20, 25 years of existence. Right? There would have been COP15, COP16, COP17, COP18, COP19. You're all ignoring it. And then we say that, Modi is to be blamed for bad air quality in Delhi, or Kejriwal to be blamed. Thing is, we are ourselves not aware of it. So to answer this question, let's go back in time. Let's go back in time to the year 1992. Take a guess. What's happening in this world? Year 1992. A very different world. No TikTok, no Twitter, no influencers. What a peaceful world. But even in that world, there's one thing common that we have today. Let's watch a video from that age.
Hello, I'm Severin Suzuki speaking for ECHO, the Environmental Children's Organization. We're a group of 12 and 13-year-olds trying to make a difference. Vanessa Seti, Morgan Geisler, Michelle Quigg, and me. We've raised all the money to come here ourselves, to come 5,000 miles to tell you adults you must change your ways. Coming up here today, I have no hidden agenda. I am fighting for my future. Losing my future is not like losing an election or a few points on the stock market. I am here to speak for all generations to come. I am here to speak on behalf of the starving children around the world whose cries go unheard. I am here to speak for the countless animals.
Observe this. United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. Rio de Janeiro, June 1992. Which part of the world is this? Which country? You've done geography, right? Shalov? Which country? Devesh? No, Shivani, after you.
Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil. Let's watch it.
Dying across this planet because they have nowhere left to go. I am afraid to go out in the sun now because of the holes in our...
Where is G20 happening? What happened this year? Which country? Sweetie?
Brazil.
Okay, which city?
I'm forgetting the name of the city.
Okay, do the homework because these are prelims questions. Bother you with such nonsense.
our ozone. I'm afraid to breathe the air because I don't know what chemicals are in it. I used to go fishing in Vancouver, my home, with my dad, until just a few years ago we found the fish full of cancers. And now we hear of animals and plants going extinct, every day vanishing forever. In my life, I have dreamt of seeing the great herds of wild animals, jungles and rainforests full of birds and butterflies. But now I wonder if they will even exist for my children to see. Did you have to worry of these things when you were my age? All this is happening before our eyes, and yet we act as if we have all the time we want and all the solutions. I'm only a child, and I don't have all the solutions. But I want you to realize, neither do you. You don't know how to fix the holes in our ozone layer. You don't know how to bring the salmon back up a dead stream. You don't know how to bring back an animal now extinct. And you can't bring back the forest that once grew where there is now a desert. If you don't know how to fix it, please stop breaking it. Here, you may be delegates of your government, business people, organizers, reporters, or politicians, but really your mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles, and all of you are someone's child. I'm only a child, yet I know we are all part of a family, 5 billion strong, in fact 30 million species strong, and borders and governments will never change that. I'm only a child, yet I know we are all in this together and should act as one single world towards one single goal. In my anger, I am not blind, and in my fear, I am not afraid of telling the world how I feel. In my country, we make so much waste. We buy and throw away, buy and throw away, buy and throw away, and yet northern countries will not share with the needy. Even when we have more than enough, we are afraid to share. We are afraid to let go of some of our wealth. In Canada, we live the privileged life, with plenty of food, water, and shelter. We have watches, bicycles, computers, and television sets. The list could go on for 2 days. 2 days ago here in Brazil, we were shocked when we spent time with some children living on the streets. This is what one child told us. I wish I was rich. And if I were, I would give all the street children food, clothes, medicines, shelter, and love and affection. If a child on the streets who has nothing is willing to share,
Okay, so what is happening here? Shirani?
So this is the last part of the speech is in a way explicitly showing the global north and global south divide that is happening with respect to climate change and overall the economic aspects of the globe since the past 2 decades and even before. Apart from that, it is also showing that the global change efforts has taken place around 2 decades back itself, and then still the fruits of it is not fetched to the larger extent, and still the same old issues are even spoken of. So yeah, this is what I could think of.
Yeah. 1992, a place called Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So in Rio, leaders from over 170 countries, they gathered under one roof. And they all tried to address one very, very, very big and important question. And that question was, how do we save our planet? That's the question. The video that we all just saw is a part of that summit. It was in this summit, something called as UNFCCC, it was born. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is like the world's climate change club. You have many clubs in your universities, consulting, and it's part of culinary club. I love food, nothing else. So in that club, they used to bring in dishes from across the world. That was my favorite club. But yes, you have consulting club and private equity club, venture capital club. Think of UNFCCC as the World Climate Change Club. Its main goal is to prevent dangerous climate change by stabilizing greenhouse gas levels. But then there is a problem. It does not tell the world how to do it. It just tells us that we all agree that climate change is bad. But now we have to figure out a way. This Rio summit is extremely critical. Why? Because UNFCCC was created at this Earth Summit. That's the name, Earth Summit, in Rio, 1992. Simple goal: prevent dangerous levels of greenhouse gases from warming the planet. Today, it looks like nearly every country in the world is part of this global climate club. But now here things will get interesting. Every year since 1995, this club holds a meeting. And they call that meeting as Conference of the Parties. In short, COP, COP. So if 1995 was COP1, what would 2024 be? COP29. Right? So that's COP29 happening where? Baku, Azerbaijan. The snippet that you saw, it was posted a few hours ago. Indian official, Indian delegate reacting to what's happening in COP29. And that's making headlines, and that will make headlines tomorrow. Why? Because of the climate finance deal. But before we jump onto that, anyone knows what's this climate finance deal? What could this mean? But even before that, let me go back to Paris. Why Paris is important? What could be the reason for Paris? Its importance. Macho?
So there is a Paris Deal 2015 under this UNFCCC convention to take efforts to limit the greenhouse gas emission, and under the Paris Deal there is provision for this amount to collect that amount to provide the smaller nations to make their efforts to limit the greenhouse gas emissions and to control that.
Paris climate deal was a marvelous deal. It's a game changer. The first time almost every country on Earth agreed to limit global warming to below 2 degrees centigrade, preferably 1.5 degrees centigrade. But why 1.5? Why not 3 or 4? What is so unique about 1.5? Because at 1.5 degrees centigrade, Arctic summers, they might still have some ice left. At 2 degrees centigrade, those summers will be completely ice-free. And when that happens, this may lead to a few domino effects. Sea levels to rise faster to begin with. It will directly threaten many coastal cities, Mumbai to New York, many island nations. Keeping it to 1.5 could perhaps prevent extreme droughts in Africa and South Asia. At 2 degrees, millions would face water scarcity. So it looks like 1.5 is not just a number, it's the difference between manageable changes and catastrophic impacts. At 3 degrees or 4 degrees, entire regions could become uninhabitable. In some parts of the world, outdoor work, it would be nearly impossible because of extreme heat. Impossible. Can't work out. Be at home. Some of you in Delhi are facing that, right? Can't work out. Food shortages will follow through. Economies will collapse. You will see mass migrations. And all of that will lead to global instability on a scale that we cannot even imagine today. So Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, it found that every 0.5 degrees of warming significantly increases risks to ecosystems, economics, communities. And that's why Paris Agreement set 1.5 degrees centigrade as the goal. Minimizes the harm while giving us a fair chance to adapt. Question is, can we stay below 1.5? It's possible. Only if we act quickly. Only if we act. Some say that Paris deal is a promise. I tend to disagree. It's a lifeline. Paris Agreement was a game changer. For the first time, almost every country on Earth agreed to limit global warming to below 2 degrees centigrade, preferably 1.5 degrees. Anything above 1.5 will lead to catastrophic consequences. Rising sea levels, extreme weather, mass migrations. Think of Maldives, small island nation, Maldives. At 2 degrees, it will disappear entirely. Imagine the geopolitical chaos that would follow. Where would the Maldivians go? Who will take responsibility? Therefore, Paris is important. So, what did countries promise in Paris? They promised to cut their emissions. How much depends upon each country. That is unique. Why? So, rich countries like the US, European Union, they pledged to lead the way. Developing countries like India, they said, we will do our part, but we need help. And this is where climate finance comes in, the headline that you will see in tomorrow's newspaper. But before I further talk about climate finance, my question is, why is this there differential treatment between European Union, US versus India? There are many who say that if US can pledge, why not India? What's wrong with that? Triveni?
US was a developed state. It already exploited some of the resources. So because of that reason, India asking developing nations asking the finance.
But that's not the answer. The other diplomat may tell you, okay, US used some of the resources. India also did the same. Some of the resources.
But it was not it was in the developing states. Already
So
USA.
it's your fault. They didn't even stop you. Are you representing my country? How will you respond? Myra?
So to deal with climate change also involves nuanced technologies, and those component is something that developed countries have at their behest, and developing countries need those extra, or they need the finance to come up with those technologies. So that is something that is another like viewpoint.
So develop your own technologies. What is this begging? Talk like a good diplomat. Tell me. Venkat?
I don't remember. There was some kind of a principle, some common responsibility principle where developed nations should encourage developing nations.
But why?
Because
Isn't
of
this a
their
fundamental
historical
question?
emissions.
Okay.
Because of their historical emissions, which are not taken into the account. Now we are concentrating the current trends, but the emissions, which that could be one reason.
Build a strong case for India because India is a leader in this space. When India's representative was speaking, many from small island nation states, many from African countries, they were looking up to her. Like JP Nadda supports Modi ji in the parliament. Similarly, you see the thumping of various other diplomats, delegates, because India was making sense. But here I don't see the sense. I'm not seeing a strong rebuttal. Soumya?
So during the Industrial Revolution, these global north or the developed nation are the ones who contributed mostly significantly to the the global temperature rise. Therefore, the global south or the developing nations are newbies into this emission game. Therefore, we both, north or south, we both need to have a common responsibility of keeping the temperature, limiting it to 2 degrees Celsius or preferably to 1.5. But these responsibility need to be differentiated as well.
Okay. To answer this question, let's time travel to the age of Industrial Revolution. What was happening during Industrial Revolution? What was that age? We've done this story in season 1, season 2, across seasons, right? The Industrial Revolution. Massive shift began in the late 1700s in Europe, and later it spread to the US. Industrial Revolution, it was a period of groundbreaking inventions. Steam engine, mechanized factories, railways. But what was powering them? Coal, oil, fossil fuels. Sounds amazing. It's transforming the world, but the thing is, it indeed brought a lot of progress, a lot of wealth to Europe, US, but it also came at a lot of cost. So what's that cost? Nihal? What could be that cost?
Happened in a time when there was no emission norms, and these things gradually developed.
Yeah. Large scale greenhouse gas emissions. No regulations, nothing. Europe, US, they were burning fossil fuels with no restrictions. And very interestingly, they were changing, the US and Europe, were changing the climate forever. They were getting all the richness, all the power, getting all the power through the riches. The world was suffering because of them. Choking. Today, you won't be surprised. US and Europe, they are the first ones to blame India for the emission. You know that? But ask a simple question. Who has emitted the most CO2 into the atmosphere in history, even today? Between 1751 till 2021, US has already emitted around 420 billion tons of CO2. Largest of any country, 420. 420. Behavior is also like that. European Union collectively, it's around 380 billion tons. India, up until now, 58 billion tons. Average American emits 15 tons of CO2 per year. Average European does that around 6.8 tons per year. Average Indian, less than 2 tons per year. US emits over 7 times what India does per person. And yet India gets blamed. How does that even make sense? Not only did they emit more over centuries, but even today, they're emitting much more per person. And still they're blaming India. Unlike Europe or the US, India today is working to lift millions out of poverty. This is our chance now. We will focus on infrastructure, work on building homes, roads, industries for 1.5 billion people. Of course, in UP, we're also destroying homes, bulldozer. But still, we're aiming to build homes, roads, industries. There are areas in India that have not seen the light of electricity. We want all that. We have to ensure basic healthcare, ensure basic education, infrastructure for everyone, and all of that will require effort. That's development. It's a process that West has already completed over a century ago. They had already built their wealth by polluting the planet. But now, as an Indian, my question is, when my time is coming in, you're stopping our progress in the garb of these negotiations. US and Europe, they industrialized early, they burned the coal, they burned the oil for centuries. And now they're questioning us. Even today, they are emitting more per person from all factual standpoint. Still, they're questioning us. They say that India is being a noisy brat. Thoughts on this? Now, as Indians, we should also think, right, that this climate change will not just affect the global north, but it will have consequences for us. It may threaten cities like Mumbai, Kolkata. There will be a phenomenon of erratic monsoons. For an agrarian economy that we have, monsoons are so important. Heat waves are killing people. Cold waves are also killing people. So India has responsibility, and India is playing a good role there. India is not a problem. India has been part of the solution. India is merely requesting the global north to do something more. From all factual standpoints, India has pledged to reach net zero emissions by 2070. India wants to balance development with sustainability. India is the fourth largest producer of renewable energy in the world. 50% of our electricity by 2030. That's the aim, by the way. That's the aim. Hopefully, we achieve that aim. 50% of our electricity should come from renewable sources. That's what we're aiming for. So India is trying a lot. Unlike America, India is not running away from the Paris deal. But India is also in a different position. We have a lot of issues at hand. We have to lift millions of people out of poverty. Otherwise, they'll be embroiled in Hindu-Muslim. They don't have the money. And it is in this context, this concept of common but differentiated responsibilities come in. What does it mean? Common but differentiated responsibility. It's a key principle in this Paris Agreement. Common but differentiated responsibilities. It is a common responsibility that we have to work towards safeguarding our planet, saving the world. But this responsibility should be differentiated based on your stage in the economic cycle. And rich countries have acknowledged this. They have acknowledged their historical emissions. And that is why they have pledged more cuts. And if they'd follow through, Indians and various global south will also follow through, because then they will also prioritize sustainable growth. Climate finance becomes important in this context. Climate finance helps developing countries to transition to clean energy without compromising their growth. Of course, India has pledged a lot of things. India pledged to install 500 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. But it's not free of cost. We need billions of dollars for that. So in the world of climate diplomacy, it's not about equality, it's about equity. What does that mean? In the world of climate diplomacy, it's not about equality, it's about equity. Why do I say that? Yes, Sujit?
Sorry, sir, because there is differentiated responsibility.
As future diplomats, you need to be articulate in what you say. Elaborate on that. I'm not convinced.
Sir, the global north have emitted more, so it will not be equitable. Like the distribution.
Myra?
So in climate diplomacy, equality will not mean like every country, like for example, developed or developing, have